The millionaire's laugh was the loudest sound on the yacht, until the waitress heard something smaller beneath it. The Celeste Harbor floated 6 miles off the Miami coast, lit like a private city against the black Atlantic. Gold chandeliers glowed above polished teak floors. Jazz moved through the upper deck in smooth waves. Crystal glasses touched softly, and every laugh seemed trained to sound expensive. At the center of the party stood Adrian Whitmore, 44, white, wearing an ivory blazer cut so sharply it looked untouched by the humid ocean air. He owned the yacht, the hotel group, and the attention of nearly every investor on board. When he laughed, people laughed with him. Not always because the joke was good. Sometimes because power had a rhythm, and everyone wanted to stay on beat. Natalie Brooks moved between the tables with a tray of coffee cups, quiet in her black and white service uniform, her hair tied back with a wine-red ribbon. She was 27, white, one of the temporary servers hired for the night. Most guests saw her only when their cup was empty. Natalie was used to that. Being overlooked gave her permission to observe. She noticed the man at table for hiding his impatience behind a smile. She noticed the woman near the rail blinking too often at the mention of numbers. She noticed Adrian's 7-year-old son, Evan, standing near the glass doors with a small wooden toy boat in his hands. The boy watched his father as if waiting for a break in the applause. Adrian was speaking about his new resort chain, describing family luxury, private beaches, and experiences designed to make children feel seen. Evan lifted the wooden boat slightly, as though he wanted to show it to him. Adrian did not turn. Natalie passed near the boy and slowed. "That is a beautiful boat," she said softly. Evan looked up, surprised that someone had noticed. "I made it." "Did you?" "For Dad." His eyes moved back to Adrian. "He only hears me when other people are watching." The sentence was quiet. Too quiet for a party. Natalie held it carefully inside herself. Before she could answer, a guest pushed his chair back and clipped the edge of her tray. One cup tilted. Natalie steadied it quickly, but a few drops of coffee landed on the white tablecloth beside Adrian's hand. Conversation paused. Natalie reached for a napkin. "I am sorry, sir." Adrian looked at the stain, then at her, and his mouth curved into a laugh meant to entertain the table. "Careful," he said. "Some things on this yacht cost more than a month of your rent." The guests laughed because he did. Natalie pressed the napkin over the stain. She did not flush. She did not shrink. She lifted the napkin, folded it once, and met his eyes. Some things leave stains money cannot clean. The laughter stopped as if someone had closed a door. Adrian's smile held for 1 second too long. Then he turned back to his investors, choosing the safety of applause. Natalie looked toward the glass doors. Evan was gone. Only the reflection of the party remained, bright over dark water. The jazz rose again. Adrian laughed again. And beneath that laughter, from somewhere below deck, Natalie heard the smallest cry. Natalie did not move at first. The smallest cry could disappear if a person chased it too loudly. She stood beside the VIP table with the folded napkin in her hand, her eyes on the service stairwell, her body still enough to listen through the party. The jazz kept playing. The champagne kept shining. Adrian Whitmore kept speaking as if nothing in the world could interrupt him for long. "This is what we are building," he told the investors, his ivory blazer bright beneath the chandelier. "A place where families feel entirely cared for, where every detail has already been handled before a guest ever has to ask." A few people nodded. Someone murmured approval. Natalie heard none of them clearly. She was listening below the music, below the laughter, below the trained confidence of rich people in a room designed to flatter them. There it was again. Not a full cry this time. More like a small sound pressed behind a wall. Then a faint knock. Wood against something hard. 1, 2. Silence. Natalie looked toward the glass doors. Evan was still gone. His wooden toy boat was gone too. She stepped away from the table and crossed to the nanny near the bar, a polished woman in a cream jacket with a tablet tucked against her side. "Excuse me," Natalie said. "Mr. Whitmore's son went below deck a few minutes ago." The nanny glanced up, then back toward the guests. "He knows the lounge." I heard a cry from below. The nanny's smile tightened, not with fear, but with irritation. Evan likes hiding when he feels ignored. Natalie held her gaze. That sounded different. "You are new tonight," the nanny said quietly. "Please do not turn a child's mood into a scene." Natalie did not answer right away. The word mood sat badly in her chest. She had heard that word before, years ago in Tampa, when her little sister had been trapped inside an old pantry during a family move. The adults thought the child was sulking. Natalie had been the one to hear the tiny tap, tap, tap behind the door. She had learned then that panic did not always scream. Sometimes it saved its breath. On the upper deck, Adrian laughed again, louder than the music, and the investors laughed with him. Natalie looked at the nanny. If he is fine, checking will cost 1 minute. The lower deck is secured. Then why did I hear someone asking not to be left there? The nanny's face changed just enough to show the sentence had landed, but pride stepped in before concern could. I will look after it. Natalie waited 1 beat. 2. The nanny did not move. So Natalie set the stained napkin on the service counter, placed her tray beside it, and untied the small towel from her wrist. Lauren, another server, caught her arm gently. Where are you going? Natalie looked toward the stairwell. Below. After what he said to you? That has nothing to do with the child. Lauren let go. Natalie opened the side door. Instantly the warmth of the party thinned. The stairwell below was narrow, white, and cooler, with brass trim catching strips of light from overhead. As she descended, the jazz became muffled. Adrian's laugh became a memory. The hum of ventilation grew clearer. Halfway down, the yacht leaned softly over a swell, and a loose panel clicked somewhere beneath her feet. Then came another sound. A small cry. Closer now. Thinner. Natalie stopped on the step, one hand on the rail. Evan. No answer. She went down faster, not running, because fear needed steadiness more than speed. At the bottom, the corridor stretched forward in cold white light. Doors lined both sides. Guest suite, crew access, children's lounge, observation room. Natalie listened. For 3 seconds, there was only the hum of air and water against the hull. Then from the far end came one faint knock, followed by a child's broken whisper. Is anyone there? Natalie's face stayed calm, but her heart understood before her feet moved. The party above had missed him. She had not. Natalie reached the far end of the corridor and found the wooden toy boat first. It lay on its side near the observation room door, one tiny sail bent, one painted blue stripe catching the cold light. She picked it up carefully. The wood was warm from Evan's hand. That small warmth made the corridor feel even emptier. Evan, she said, kneeling beside the door. It is Natalie. I am right here. A pause. Then the child's voice came through the narrow seam near the floor. I cannot open it. Natalie tried the handle. It shifted, then locked hard. Not a full security lock. A jammed slide latch, pulled out of line when the yacht leaned. The kind of small failure people ignored until a child was behind it. Are you hurt? She asked. No. His answer came too fast, the way children answered when they wanted adults not to worry. Then his breath shook. It is dark. Natalie glanced through the small, oval window. The observation room was meant to be charming in daylight, with low benches, storage cabinets, and a thick glass panel facing the engine side waterline. At night, with the lights dimmed and the door jammed, it looked like a box made of shadows. Evan sat on the floor near the bench, knees drawn close, face pale, eyes wet but focused on the door. Natalie lifted the toy boat to the window. I found your boat. Evan's hand rose slightly, then fell. I dropped it. I have it safe. His breathing hitched. Not dangerous yet, but climbing toward fear. Natalie knew that sound. Tampa came back in a flash of dust, cardboard boxes, and her sister's tiny voice behind the pantry door. Everyone had been calling for her loudly from the wrong room. Natalie had stopped talking long enough to hear the tap from the right one. Since then, she had trusted small sounds more than large assurances. She looked at the wall and found the intercom beside a cabinet marked emergency linens. She pressed the button. This is Natalie Brooks on the lower deck. Evan Whitmore is locked inside the observation room. The sliding latch is jammed. Send the medic, a crew member with the master key, and Mr. Whitmore now. Static answered. Then a voice. Can you repeat that? Natalie did not let irritation enter her tone. Evan Whitmore is locked in the observation room. He is frightened, but responding. Send help now. The name moved through the system faster than her warning had moved through the party. Footsteps sounded somewhere above. Natalie returned to the door and lowered her voice. Evan, listen to me. Do not yell. Save your breath. Is Dad coming? The question was small enough to break something in her. Yes, but until he gets here, you stay with my voice. I cannot see good. Natalie shifted closer to the oval window and touched the wine-red ribbon in her hair. Can you see the red ribbon? Evan blinked, then nodded faintly. Yes. Good. Look at the red. Not the dark. The red. He stared at it, as if it were a light on shore. Natalie slipped her service card from her apron pocket and worked it into the narrow gap beside the latch. Now breathe like this. Small breath in, like smelling hot chocolate. Slow breath out, like pushing a paper boat across water. Evan tried. The first breath broke into a sob. Natalie kept her own face calm. Smaller. You do not have to be brave all at once. His next breath came thinner, but steadier. She angled the service card lower, searching for the catch. It scraped once, then stuck. Are you still there? Evan whispered. Natalie placed her palm flat against the door. I am still here. Behind her, hurried footsteps entered the corridor. The nanny arrived first, tablet clutched to her chest, her face pale with the knowledge that she had been wrong. Evan, she called. Natalie did not turn from the latch. Please call his father if he is not already on his way. The crew is coming. Call his father. The nanny backed away, voice shaking into her phone. Natalie kept working the latch. Above them, the party still glowed. Below it, the waitress everyone had laughed around knelt on the carpet, holding a wooden boat in one hand, a child's fear in the other, and a red ribbon steady in the glass. The latch moved, then stopped again, as if the door itself had learned the fear inside the room and tightened around it. Natalie kept one hand flat against the panel so Evan could feel that someone was still there. You are doing well, she said. Keep looking at the red. Through the oval window, Evan's eyes stayed fixed on the wine-red ribbon in her hair. His small face was damp, his wooden boat now pressed against the glass from Natalie's side. He breathed in short, uneven pulls, but he was listening. That mattered. Listening gave fear a shape. Shape made it smaller. Natalie shifted the service card lower along the seam and felt for the secondary catch. The yacht rolled gently over another swell, and the door frame gave a faint wooden groan. Evan flinched. It is moving. The yacht is moving, Natalie said. Not the room. You are safe where you are. I am right outside. Footsteps came fast behind her. A crewman arrived with a ring of keys, followed by the medic carrying a compact bag. The nanny stood several feet back, pale and silent now, no longer explaining anything. Move aside, the crewman said, already reaching for the lock. Natalie did not move completely. She turned just enough to meet his eyes. Slowly. He is scared. Do not rattle the door. The crewman paused, then nodded. He inserted the master key and tried to release the mechanism, but the latch had shifted out of alignment. Metal clicked uselessly. Evan heard it and began to breathe faster. Natalie immediately leaned close to the window. Evan, paper boat breath. Remember? Small in, slow out. Push the boat across water. She held the wooden toy in front of the glass and moved it gently through the air, as if it were gliding over a calm pond. Evan watched it. His next breath steadied. The medic glanced at Natalie with quick recognition. Keep doing that. She did. No pride. No panic. Just the boat. The ribbon. The voice. At the far end of the corridor, heavier footsteps struck the stairs. Adrian Whitmore appeared in his ivory blazer, but the polished man from the upper deck was gone. His face was colorless. His mouth opened when he saw the observation room door, the medic, the keys, the waitress kneeling on the floor, and his son behind the glass. Evan. The boy turned toward the sound, and his face broke with relief and hurt at the same time. Dad. Adrian stepped forward, but the medic lifted a hand. Give him space, sir. We are getting him out. Adrian stopped. It may have been the first order all night that he obeyed without argument. Natalie slid the service card into the lower seam while the crewman lifted the handle. On 3, she said quietly. 1, 2, 3. The crewman turned the key. Natalie pressed the catch. The latch clicked cleanly, and the door opened a few inches. Cold, stale air slipped into the corridor. The medic reached first, careful and calm, guiding Evan toward the opening. Natalie stepped back just enough, but Evan's hand found her wrist before he reached his father. He held on tightly. Adrian saw it. Everyone did. Evan came out wrapped in the medic's steady attention, still holding Natalie with one hand and the wooden boat with the other. Adrian lowered himself to the floor, not caring about the carpet or the guests or the ivory blazer. Buddy, I am here. Evan looked at him with tired eyes. She heard me under your laugh. The corridor went silent. No accusation could have been sharper. No speech could have been clearer. Adrian stared at his son, then at Natalie, and the memory of his own laughter seemed to return from the upper deck and stand beside him like something shameful. Natalie did not look triumphant. She only touched Evan's shoulder lightly and said, "Your dad is here now." That mercy made Adrian lower his eyes. He had owned the yacht above them, but Natalie had owned the only thing that mattered below it, the silence between a child's cry and someone finally listening. The upper deck did not look as bright when Evan returned to it. The chandeliers still glowed. The glasses still reflected gold. The ocean still pressed its dark face against the windows. But the party had lost its permission to pretend. Conversations faded as the medic guided Evan toward the family lounge, and Adrian followed close behind, one hand hovering near his son's back without touching until Evan allowed it. Natalie walked a few steps behind them, holding the wooden toy boat carefully in both hands. She had not meant to carry it like something sacred, but after what had happened below, it felt wrong to let it swing at her side. At the top of the stairs, Evan paused. The guests saw his pale face, the small boat, the waitress beside him, and the man in the ivory blazer who no longer looked untouchable. Adrian looked at the room where he had been laughing while his son was calling from below. The silence gave him no place to hide. "And the music," he said quietly. The event manager moved at once. The last note of jazz disappeared into the air. Adrian turned to the medic. "Is he all right?" The medic answered with care. "He is stable." He was frightened and confined in a dark space, but he responded well. "I recommend quiet, warm air, monitoring, and a full evaluation when we dock." Adrian nodded. "We dock now." An investor stepped forward, softening his voice in the way people do when they still want business to survive discomfort. "Adrian, of course. We can resume the announcement another time." Adrian looked at him as if the sentence had come from a language he no longer wished to speak. "There is nothing to resume tonight." Evan leaned closer to Natalie instead of toward the crowd. That small movement humbled Adrian more than public failure could have. His son was safe, but trust had not returned just because danger had passed. Natalie noticed and lowered herself slightly, so Evan did not have to look up. "You did well," she said. "You kept breathing." Evan held out one hand. She placed the wooden boat in it. "You kept it safe. It helped me find you." He looked at the boat, then at his father. "I wanted to show Dad." Adrian's face changed. Not dramatically. Worse. Honestly. He bent to Evan's height. "I should have looked when you tried to show me." Evan did not answer right away. Children often forgave quickly, but their bodies remembered slowly. He held the boat against his chest. "You were laughing." The sentence landed in front of everyone, quiet and exact. Adrian swallowed. "I was." Natalie stepped back then, giving father and son room, but Evan caught her sleeve. "Stay." Adrian heard the word and did not turn it into an order. He looked at Natalie with the humility of someone asking from a place lower than authority. "Would you stay nearby until he feels settled?" Natalie looked at Evan. "I can stay nearby." They moved into the family lounge, away from the guests, away from the tablecloth, away from the laughter that had become impossible to remember without shame. The lounge was warm, with a cream sofa, low brass lamps, and the soft blue shimmer of the Miami night beyond the window. Evan sat with a blanket around his shoulders, the wooden boat resting on his lap. The medic checked him again. Natalie stood near the door, close enough for Evan to see the wine-red ribbon. Adrian sat beside his son, but not too close. He was learning distance. He was learning permission. After several quiet breaths, Evan whispered, "She heard me." Adrian looked at Natalie, then back at his son. "I know." Under your laugh. Adrian lowered his eyes. "I know that too." Natalie did not rescue him from the truth. She only said to Evan, "Your dad is listening now." Adrian lifted his head at that. Not because the words excused him, because they gave him a direction. Outside the lounge, the yacht turned toward shore. Inside it, the richest man on board sat still for the first time all night, listening to his son breathe as if every small sound had become a gift he had almost lost. The family lounge carried a quiet that did not feel empty. It felt earned. Evan rested on the cream sofa with the blanket around his shoulders and the wooden boat on his lap, turning it slowly between his fingers as if checking whether it had survived the dark with him. The medic sat nearby, writing notes in a small tablet, while the nanny stood near the doorway with her hands folded too tightly. Natalie remained beside the lamp, close enough for Evan to see the wine-red ribbon, far enough to let Adrian learn how to be present without taking over. Adrian noticed that distance. He noticed everything now, or tried to. The way Evan's breathing softened when Natalie stayed still. The way his son looked at the door whenever footsteps passed outside. The way the wooden boat had become more than a toy because someone had kept it safe when he had not. "Buddy," Adrian said gently, "when you went below, were you trying to find me later?" Evan shook his head. "I wanted quiet first." Adrian absorbed that. His party had been too loud for his own child. In the observation room. Evan looked down. "I thought I could wait there until you were done laughing." The words were not meant to punish. That made them harder to bear. Adrian placed both hands together, resisting the old instinct to explain, to repair too quickly, to cover pain with promises. "I am sorry I made you feel like you had to wait for me to become your dad again." Evan blinked at him. Natalie looked toward the window, giving them privacy inside a room that still needed her calm. The yacht shifted gently toward shore. Outside, the party was ending in low voices. Inside, Evan lifted the wooden boat. "I made this because you said hotels should feel like places people want to come back to." Adrian remembered saying that on a video call 3 weeks ago, half listening, half reading a report. "I remember." Evan's mouth tightened. "You said it to men on your computer. I was behind you." Adrian closed his eyes for 1 second. He had taught his son that attention was something other people received through screens, speeches, and applause. "Then I should have turned around." Evan ran one finger over the bent sail. Natalie looked. Adrian turned toward her. She did. Evan held the boat toward Natalie. "Can you fix the sail?" Natalie stepped closer and crouched. The little wooden sail had not broken, only bent at the thin edge. She straightened it carefully with her fingertips. "There. It still knows where it is going." Evan smiled faintly. Adrian watched the small repair and understood why money felt useless in moments like this. It could replace the boat. It could not restore the meaning of the hands that fixed it. The nanny took a step forward. "Mr. Whitmore, I truly thought he was in the children's lounge." Adrian looked at her, then at Natalie, then at the hallway beyond the door. "We will talk later," he said. His voice was not loud. But from now on, when a staff member reports a child in distress, no one explains it away. The nanny lowered her eyes. Natalie did not speak. She did not need to. Adrian looked back at Evan. "I need to apologize to Miss Brooks where I embarrassed her." Evan frowned. "In front of the laughing people?" "Yes. Do not do it like a speech." Adrian almost smiled, but the lesson was too sharp for that. "How should I do it?" Evan leaned against the pillow, tired but certain. "Say what you did. Then stop." Natalie's eyes softened. Children often understood dignity before adults dressed it in language. Adrian stood slowly. He looked at Natalie. "Would you want to be there?" Natalie answered without hesitation. "No," he accepted it. "I understand. Do not make your apology depend on my approval," she said quietly. "Make it depend on the truth." Adrian nodded. For the first time all night, he did not ask for the room to move with him. He left the lounge alone, walking back toward the upper deck where his laughter had started, carrying the weight of a bent wooden sail and a child who had waited too long to be seen. Adrian returned to the upper deck without the protection of music. The jazz quartet had stopped. The investors had gathered near the VIP table in careful silence, pretending not to wait for him while waiting for every word. The chandeliers still burned gold above the white tablecloths, but their light no longer made the room feel rich. It made everything visible. The coffee stain had been wiped away earlier, yet Adrian saw it clearly. He saw Natalie's hand pressing the napkin down. He saw his own face bending into that polished little laugh. He heard the guests following him into cruelty because power had made it easy. Preston Vale, his lead investor, stepped forward first. "Adrian, we all understand. Family emergency. We can handle the announcement another night." Adrian looked at him. "That is not what I came to say." Preston's smile thinned. Around them, glasses rested untouched on tabletops. A few guests glanced toward the family lounge, where Evan was resting out of sight. Adrian placed one hand on the back of the chair where he had stood when he mocked Natalie. "Earlier tonight, I disrespected Miss Brooks in this room." No one moved. The words had no decoration, and that made them harder to ignore. A guest bumped her tray. A few drops of coffee fell on the tablecloth. "I chose to turn that into a joke about her income, her place, and her worth." He paused. Not long enough for anyone to rescue him. Some of you laughed. I let you. A woman near the rail lowered her eyes. Preston cleared his throat. It was a bad joke. Everyone was tense. Adrian turned to him with a calm that held no friendship for excuses. No. Everyone was comfortable. That was the problem. The sentence settled across the deck like a cold wind. Near the service station, Lauren stood with a tray in her hands, watching. The nanny remained near the lounge door, pale and quiet. Natalie was not there. Adrian had not asked her to stand beside his apology like evidence. While I was laughing, he continued, my son was below deck, trying to be heard. Miss Brooks heard him. She went where others did not go. She kept him calm. She held his fear carefully until help came. His voice changed then, not breaking, but losing its polish. But I am not apologizing because she became useful to me. I am apologizing because she deserved respect before she did anything extraordinary. That was when the room truly went silent. Not social silence. Moral silence. The kind that asks people to meet themselves without applause. Adrian looked toward the service station even though Natalie was absent. Miss Brooks, whether you hear this now or later, I was wrong. I treated money like it could measure a person. Tonight proved it cannot even measure what matters. The captain stood near the stairs, listening with the crew. Adrian turned slightly, so they were included too. The event is over. We return to Miami now. Every safety concern from crew will be reviewed directly, and no warning about a child will be dismissed as mood or drama again. No one argued. The yacht seemed to exhale around him. For a moment, Adrian thought of walking back as quickly as possible, hiding inside fatherhood because it hurt less than public shame. But Evan's instruction returned to him. Say what you did, then stop. So Adrian stopped. He did not add a story about learning. He did not ask the room to admire his accountability. He simply left the apology where the insult had been and turned toward his son. As he passed the service station, he saw the folded napkin with the faint coffee mark resting beside an empty tray. Natalie must have left it there before going back to the lounge. Adrian picked it up carefully, not as a trophy, not as forgiveness, but as proof of a moment he should never soften in memory. Behind him, the guests remained quiet. Ahead of him, from the family lounge, came the smallest sound of Evan breathing. This time, Adrian heard it before anything else. The family lounge looked different when Adrian returned, not because anything inside it had changed, but because he had. The brass lamp still glowed softly beside the cream sofa. The Miami night still shimmered blue beyond the window. Evan still rested under the blanket with the wooden boat on his lap. Natalie still stood near the far side of the room, quiet in her black and white uniform, the wine-red ribbon in her hair catching a small line of light whenever she moved. But Adrian no longer entered like a man arriving at a room he owned. He stopped at the doorway and waited until Evan looked up. Did you say it? Evan asked. Adrian came closer and sat on the edge of the low chair near the sofa. Yes. Did you make it a speech? The question was sleepy but serious. Adrian glanced at Natalie, then back at his son. I tried not to. Evan studied him for a moment. Did you say what you did? I did. Then stop. Adrian nodded. Then I stopped. Evan seemed satisfied. He turned the wooden boat in his hands, touching the straightened sail Natalie had fixed. Good. The word was small, but it felt like the first plank in a bridge. The medic looked up from his notes. He is doing well. Still tired, but stable. We should keep the return quiet and have him checked once we dock. Adrian nodded. We are already heading in. He looked at Evan. No more party. Evan's eyes moved toward the door. Are the laughing people gone? They are leaving when we dock. Good. Natalie watched Adrian absorb that without defending anyone, including himself. He had begun to understand that a child did not always need explanations. Sometimes a child needed the noise to stop. A crew member appeared quietly at the door. Sir, the captain asked about the route and the lower deck review. Adrian turned, then stopped himself before standing. He looked at Evan first. I need to speak with the captain for 1 minute. Is that all right? Evan blinked, surprised by the question. You are asking me? Yes. Evan thought about it. Stay where I can see you. Adrian moved only to the doorway, keeping himself in Evan's line of sight. Bring the captain here, he told the crew member, and the engineer who knows that observation room latch. A few minutes later, the captain and an older engineer stood in the hallway outside the lounge. Adrian kept his voice low. Tell me what happened without polishing it. The engineer shifted uneasily. The slide latch has been sticking since last month, mostly from humidity. We filed a maintenance note. The captain's jaw tightened. I believed it had been handled. Adrian looked down at the folded coffee-stained napkin in his hand. The mark was faint now, but it still interrupted the white cloth. Believed is not handled, he said. His voice was quiet enough not to disturb Evan, but firm enough to change the hallway. Tomorrow, every latch on this yacht is inspected. Every lower deck concern goes directly to the captain and to my office. No filtering. No waiting until a guest notices. No waiting until a child knocks. The engineer nodded, relief and shame crossing his face together. Adrian looked toward Natalie. And staff reports are not suggestions to be dismissed. Natalie did not answer for the crew. She only held his gaze long enough to make sure the sentence belonged to action, not performance. Evan lifted his head slightly. Dad. Adrian stepped back into the lounge at once. I am here. Do not make the little room cold anymore. Adrian crouched beside him. I will not. And listen if I say I do not like somewhere. I will listen before anyone explains you away. Evan held the boat toward him. Can we put this in your office? Adrian took it carefully. Where I can see it every day? Evan nodded. So you remember below. Adrian's fingers closed gently around the wooden boat. The stained napkin was in one hand. His son's boat was in the other. One reminded him of the disrespect he had shown. The other reminded him of the cry he had nearly missed. Natalie tied her ribbon a little tighter and stepped back toward the door. Evan noticed immediately. Are you leaving? Not yet, she said. Just giving you room. Evan relaxed. Adrian looked at her then, finally understanding that dignity was not distance from care. It was care without possession. The yacht moved toward Miami Harbor, quieter than it had been all night. Above them, chandeliers dimmed. Around them, systems began to change. And in the small family lounge, a father learned to stay visible, a child learned his voice could matter, and a waitress remained near the doorway, not as a servant waiting for orders, but as the person who had taught the richest man on board how to hear. The Celeste Harbor reached Miami before sunrise, gliding toward the marina with its lights lowered and its decks quiet. The same yacht that had sailed out as a stage for laughter returned like a room after a hard truth had been spoken. Evan slept for most of the final mile, curled beneath the blanket with his wooden boat resting safely near his hand. Adrian sat beside him, watching the small rise and fall of his son's breathing. His phone stayed face down. Messages gathered. Deals waited. For once, waiting did not feel like loss. Natalie finished her work without asking anyone to notice. She collected the untouched cups from the upper deck. She folded the unused napkins. She returned silver trays to the service cabinet and wiped one last ring of coffee from the counter near the VIP table. The stained napkin was no longer there. Adrian had kept it. She hoped he would not frame it like proof of goodness. She hoped he would keep it somewhere inconvenient, where it could interrupt him when his pride became too smooth again. At the dock, the morning air was soft and gray. Palm trees moved lightly near the marina lights. A medical car waited beyond the gangway, quiet and ready. The medic spoke with Adrian in low tones, explaining the follow-up evaluation, rest, and how fear could linger even after a child was safe. Adrian listened to every word. He did not look over the medic's shoulder. He did not rush the explanation. When Evan woke, he sat up slowly and reached first for the wooden boat. Adrian placed it in his hands. We are home, he said. Evan looked toward the gangway, then back at the lounge door. Where's Natalie? Finishing her shift. Evan frowned. She should not have to finish after finding me. Adrian's eyes softened. You are right. But she may want to leave the way she came in, with her dignity in her own hands. Evan thought about that, not fully understanding, but feeling the respect inside it. Can I say goodbye? You can ask. Natalie was near the service exit when Evan came with Adrian beside him. The boy held the boat against his chest. Adrian kept a careful distance, letting Evan lead. Natalie, Evan said. She turned immediately. Her hair ribbon caught the first pale light of morning. Hey, sailor. Evan held out a small folded card made from yacht stationery. The writing inside was uneven but clear. Thank you for hearing below. Natalie read it, and for the first time all night, her expression nearly broke. She steadied it with a soft smile. Thank you for calling. Evan touched the bent sail. Dad is putting this in his office. Natalie looked at Adrian. He held up the stained napkin, folded in his other hand. And this, he said. Not where guests can see it. Where I can. Good, Natalie said. Private reminders work better when they cannot earn applause. Adrian accepted the sentence with a nod. It would have embarrassed him earlier. Now it sounded like instruction. The captain approached with a maintenance report, but Adrian raised one hand gently. After the clinic, he said. Then he looked down at Evan. Your health first. The yacht second. Evan studied him as if testing whether the order would hold. Adrian did not look away. Natalie saw the difference. It was not perfection. It was attention. That was enough for morning. The gangway opened. Crew members stood aside. Natalie picked up her empty tray, ready to leave through the crew exit. Adrian stepped back, giving her space instead of gratitude shaped like ownership. Miss Brooks, he said, I am grateful. Then keep listening, she answered. Evan lifted the wooden boat in a small wave. Natalie gave one nod, quiet and warm, then walked down toward the dock. No spotlight followed her. No speech announced her. The wind moved the wine-red ribbon against her shoulder as Miami brightened behind the marina. Adrian stood on the yacht with his son beside him, a stained napkin in one hand, and the small sound of a child's breathing finally larger than every deal in his world. Natalie had found Evan below deck, but by sunrise, Adrian understood she had found something else too. Beneath the laughter, beneath the money, beneath the careful shine of his life, there had been a father waiting to remember how to hear.